I feel a bit sort of like an Anglo-Saxon in the face of the Viking invasion. Particularly after Ola told me how many martial arts experts there are in the room. It's a bit more, it's actually nearly 1,000 years since King Canute's invasion of these shores. Anyway, I'm going to talk for a few minutes about how we see the landscape changing, some of the trends that we see from WPP and what our clients are worried about. And then Ola is going to ask me a few questions. So this is WPP's organizational chart, but some of the brands in our business. And today, around 32% of our business comes from digital marketing. We're actually pleased to say we're the 7th largest digital marketing company in the world, which I was actually surprised to see when the numbers came out from paid content. And it's obviously very important to us. The most recent thing we did was AKQA joined the group. So digital is a major focus for us as a business. You know, if you were to sum up our strategy in 2 words, it would be, you know, China and the internet. And by China, I mean the growth in all of the faster growing parts of the world, not the emerging markets, and the internet, all the changes that technology are applying to digital. But before I get on to the trends, there's one thing to remember, which is TV is not going away. So if you look forward, 4 years, the share of ad spend going on television is increasing, not decreasing. So those of you that make presentations to WPP, sort of please get that right. You know, the reasons for that are obviously in parts of the world like China, Brazil, India. You know, the need for our clients to reach mass audiences make television very attractive. And I think television will continue to be extremely attractive to brands who are looking for mass reach. The other point, obviously, is the share of digital is increasing, and that you don't really want to work in print. You know, you don't want to take a job at a newspaper or a magazine. Magazines, have become the thing you read when they tell you to switch off your devices on the aeroplane or takeoff and landing, and go to Pret a Manger at lunchtime today and see how many people are reading newspapers. I mean, it's 5 years ago in a sandwich shop, everyone would be reading a newspaper. Today, everyone's on their smartphones. So I'd be very worried about being in the traditional, print business. For those businesses to thrive, they need to derive other revenue streams. So the things we worry about, the first is mobile, and Hans made this case very eloquently. We have a number of 2 billion smartphones we took from one of those market research companies where the charts go up and to the right. I think it could be more like, as he said, 3 billion or more in the next 5 years. And this is truly revolutionary, as he said, to the marketing and communications business, but also to industry more broadly. There's 4 billion people in the world with no postal address. It's hard to have a bank account if they can't send you a statement. You have a phone, it's a totally different proposition. And we've already seen the changes that mobile has driven, in Africa and other less developed parts of the world, and that I think will be even more transformative. So mobile is critical to us. Whether it's mobile advertising, I'm not so sure. We had that debate about, is this year the year of the mobile? And it was always judged by whether people will advertise on mobile devices. I don't know that mobile will ever be a major advertising medium. Today, in the US, I saw some statistics, it's $2 billion. So $2 billion of mobile ad spend on, I think, around 100 of internet ad spend. So a 50-to-1 ratio. Now, clearly that will compress, but I don't know that it will be that. But clearly it will be a way by which our clients will want to communicate with their customers through apps and websites. So think of the British Airways app, or your bank app, or your car app. So every brand you have a big relationship will have something on a mobile device that will communicate with you. The second is e-commerce. So while I hope you do a lot of shopping while you're here in London, because we need the help, we're also the global home of e-commerce. So 11% of UK retail sales is online, 6% of grocery sales, and it's the highest in the world. We have businesses like Net-a-Porter here who are really revolutionizing the world of e-commerce. If you go back 10 years, people said to Natalie, no one will ever buy clothes online. They certainly won't buy luxury goods. It's a complete, it's going to be a complete disaster. I think she's proven people wrong. But it's not just e-commerce in a classic sense of going online and having something delivered to you at home. You might also, shop at home and have something delivered to you in store. A lot of lot of companies or retailers are finding that a quarter of their e-commerce sales are actually picked up in store rather than delivered to home. And it's also all the plethora of communications that we have on an electronic basis with the shopper. So couponing, in-store marketing, retail marketing. The third trend we worry about is social. And I think 3 years ago, maybe social would have been the first and not the third. But these are the numbers of Facebook users by market from one of those sources. I mean, I'd say a couple of observations. One, of the first 5 countries, only one is a developed country, so to speak, the US. So it's clearly a very global phenomenon. Do you remember when people said, oh, it's Orkut in Brazil? Well, it's not Orkut any longer. There's 57 million Facebook users in Brazil. Or India aren't really on Facebook. Well, they are. So clearly, Facebook is transformative from a user or consumer perspective. Whether it's going to be a major advertising and marketing medium, I think is yet to be determined. And I guess the IPO has brought that into very sharp relief. For lots of our clients, we find Twitter actually as interesting or more interesting than Facebook. It's a much more kind of personal and idea-led medium. When we take clients on a tour of the West Coast, they're very interested in Twitter and a lot of the work that comes out of there. And then the last thing we worry about is data. So every marketing interaction today leads a data trail, and our job as a group, if you like, is to connect all those data trails together on behalf of our clients so that they can target their customers or reach their customers more efficiently, measure the effectiveness of their spending. And all of that, I guess to some extent, is under pressure from the privacy debate on one side and the regulatory debate on the other, and what I would call the sort of balkanization of the internet around sort of some dominant ecosystems and the pressure on sort of third-party data measurement and research services. So there's both an opportunity in data to bring all that together and also to some extent a threat, I think particularly here in Europe, if we as an industry don't get our house in order in terms of protecting consumer privacy and explaining to consumers exactly what it is that we're doing so they don't find it spooky. So those are some of the trends. What do our clients worry about? Well, they worry about what I call scale and complexity. So we've all built brands in an era of mass reach, and suddenly this stuff is all fragmented. So reaching hundreds of millions of consumers easily on lots of these new platforms is not easy, and it's a lot more complicated than it used to be. It's a lot more expensive, so cost is a major issue. Clients come and say, well, I thought this digital stuff was supposed to be cheaper, but our bills seem to be increasing. The number of agencies increase. We have now social media agencies to join mobile agencies, typically seated around the table. There are 10, 12, 14 agencies. So one of the things we've been doing at WPP is working on new structures to bring those agencies together to work in a more collaborative fashion across our kind of vertical silos for clients. The third is innovation. So not just innovation in marketing, but innovation in product. So think of the Nike Fuel Band, or the integration of technology with product. The fourth, going on from that, is technology. So that what I would call the CMO-CIO debate. The CIO is responsible for technology. The CMO says, I can't get anything done. I just want to go off and do it on my own. The CIO says, well, no, we have to do it this way. And you end up in a kind of complicated organizational structure. And then the last thing I think clients worry about is measurement. So one of the beauties of digital is that everything is measurable. One of the challenges is there's so much data around, it's hard to get any sense out of it. And actually, it's ironic that clients complain that digital is sort of less accountable than traditional media, when traditional media isn't really measurable in any meaningful way, but they have sort of mental or heuristic models of what they should spend that make it much easier. So that's kind of what's on our mind and what our clients are worried about, and maybe it's a sort of thought starter from questions from Ola or the floor. Yeah? Thank you.
I'll go opera again. So I mean, 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago, a marketing director came to a media agency. They helped them spend money on television, some on print, some on outdoor, and then maybe play around with internet. It was fairly easy, not very complex. Now there's a plethora of retargeting, mobile positioning, all kinds of services. how does if you would be a marketing director of a large international brand, how would you go about staying on top of all these things, and how would you spend your marketing money differently now than what you would have done 15 years ago?
I mean, the first thing to say is that's fantastic for us. In a more complicated world, clients need more advice. And if we can get our act together, and I think in many ways we are, we can help clients navigate that more complicated world. I'd say it differs by category. So the sort of native companies, the e-commerce companies, the native digital companies get it much more easily. I'd say clients that do it well, clients like Nike, demonstrate a mix of sort of traditional skills of, I hate the word storytelling, but I used it, brand building, doing good TV ads. And by the way, good ads look even better on 42-inch plasma screen TVs with surround sound, but also, engaging digital experiences on top of it. So I'd say
how do you think these things
do the basics. I think, people need to get the basics right and then do the innovation. And too often you see, I think, a lot of innovation without the basics.
I think that's an interesting. That's also a key takeaway. Don't start innovate before you have the basics right. But how do you build the basics, and who do you build it with? Do you sit down and have sort of an innovation marketing department? Do you sort of have think tanks with a lot of external entrepreneurs, or do you just hire somebody that gets it? How do you sort of how do you think Nike comes up with all these fantastic things?
Well, I think it's leadership from the top and passion from the bottom, and then you just have to deal with the sort of middle as best you can. Probably that's the right mix, right? Yeah. You see in those organizations passionate CMOs, people that get, spend time on the West Coast, that get stuck into what's going on, and then you see people at the product people, if you like, who are really passionate about what they do and get it. And you have to empower those people and don't let the bureaucracy
or the org chart get in the way.
Yeah, you don't let the bureaucrats kill everything off, basically.
So if Nike is doing it really well, who's not doing it well? Who's like, whoops, don't do what they do?
Well, none of our clients do anything badly. I mentioned one example. You asked me this. I mentioned one example. I mean, actually, it's slightly uncomfortable mentioning it. So it shows how I saw a tampon box that said, "Friend me on Facebook," and I just sort of thought that the most bizarre thought going through a marketing director's head. Like, why would the consumer of that product take that action? So I think there is a. We need to understand what these media are for and what people are likely to do, and not just like dive in and say, okay, that's it. An element of that is not a bad thing to do, but there's a sort of element of appropriateness around what we do as well, I guess.
Having sort of a global vantage point, is the world flat? Are the things that works in China working in the US and in India and in
China
Australia?
is totally different from everywhere else in the world, right? It's the same, maybe it's the same but with different names. In some ways it's totally different, in some ways it's totally the same. I think the world is not flat. I mean, that's one mistake clients make is to assume, the consultants come in and sort of make everything the same and centralize everything, and that doesn't work. You have to be closer to your consumers. So, no, I don't think the world is flat. True, there are global brands, Apple, Nike, Audi, very strong global brands. But I think the work that they do needs to be tailored to local markets, and also we're going to see brands come out of some other parts of the world.
How is WPP evolving? I mean, you're investing in technologies, you're investing in startups, you're building different things than what sort of a traditional advisor would have been before. Are you also seeing that your business model is changing, that you sort of are a co-entrepreneur with your clients in the future?
I wouldn't say it's changing. I wouldn't say it's changing that much. I'd say the business model isn't changing that much, because the business model probably stays the same. But I'd say we're much more focused on technology. We're much more focused on data than we were 5 years ago. Advertising is not advertising is less than a quarter of our business, sort of traditional creative advertising. The largest part of WPP is actually consumer insight, which is founded on data, data collection. So I'd say, if you say, where do we want to be in 5 years' time? We want to be a data, a marketing, technology, data company. That's kind of what we want to be in 5 or 10 years' time. And we're in a process of transformation to get there that is not, is not easy in a group that's grown by acquisition, is very decentralized. We have a lot of people around the world in lots of different offices and lots of different brands.
But it's also sort of transition going from being an art where people in funny hats and funky clothes had an opinion to being a science where people are looking at data.
Yeah, I wouldn't throw the art. I don't think we want to throw the art stuff away, though.
No.
Because the art stuff actually is what gets people excited and what inspires people and what changes people's opinions and what gets people to buy brands. So I'd say, we are always going to be a sort of hybrid organization. Why do clients come, let's be honest, the likes of Google and Facebook maybe less now than before, but they go and talk directly to our clients. And it drives us mad, and we tell them that. But they do. But I'd say they don't come to clients with ideas in general, and we go to clients with ideas, and you need ideas to make these platforms work for you. So we have to work, and we do in partnership with Facebook and Google and those together to make those platforms work. But when you talk about a great brand, you don't say, well, they executed really well, or the scientist did a great job. You say that was a fantastic idea or fantastic ad. The P&G. The idea that P&G had about sponsoring mums for the Olympics. This is kind of there's an insight in that makes people think, I think.
Cool. So thank you very much for
Pleasure.
coming here and sharing with us.